Sapphic used to be synonymous with lesbian, but then it got lost in the interim. Sapphic stems from Sappho. Sappho was a famous homosexual poet.
This isn't exactly true, so let's dive into the history of the poet Sappho and the word Sapphic. For those who don't know me, my name's Amanda, and I'm a public historian of queer history. For someone who has influenced global culture for millennia, we know remarkably few biographical facts about Sappho herself. Most of what we do know comes from the Suda, a 12th century Byzantine encyclopedia written 15 centuries after her death. And then we can flesh it out with some details from the fragments of her poetry and references by other ancient writers. We know that Sappho was born around 620 BCE on the Greek island of Lesbos to an aristocratic family. She had at least 3 brothers, and she may have been married, although the name that's given for her husband in the Suda is essentially an ancient Greek joke that translates to her having been married to the dick of man, so maybe not. She may have had a daughter, or she may have had a young female lover who early translators misidentified as a daughter. She either fled or was exiled from Lesbos twice due to political unrest. She spent some time in Sicily, and we know that she died at some point after middle age because we have a poetry fragment in which she references her gray hair and stiff knees. The legend that Sappho leaped to her death from the Leucadian cliffs for the love of a ferryman was started by a Greek playwright named Menander, and there is absolutely no historical evidence that it's true. At various points throughout history, Sappho has been dismissed as a whore, ridiculed as an uptight schoolmarm, celebrated as a feminist, and embraced as the very first actual lesbian. One 19th century journal described her as a woman of warm poetic temperament, of great lyric power, of voluptuous passionate yearnings, and of many moral shortcomings. But through it all, Sappho has been revered from antiquity until now as a musician and a poet. In her day, Sappho was known as the poetess, in the same way that Homer was known simply as the poet, and after she died, she became known as the 10th muse. Sappho is one of the people who invented Greek lyric poetry, and she is quite literally the reason that we think of poets as moody introverts struggling to put words to overwhelming feelings. Sappho is the first Western poet to write about internal emotional experiences, like the way your heart seizes in your chest when you see your crush talking to someone else, or the way that lust can send fire racing beneath your skin. And in the poetry fragments that we have, which is fewer than 700 lines out of the estimated 10,000 that she would have produced, Sappho was evoking the love of women. Sappho was not a homosexual because the concept of homosexuality did not exist in the ancient world. And before you roll your eyes at me, I cannot stress enough how different the ancient Greek view of love, sex, and relationships was from our modern understanding of those concepts. It is very possible, and I would say even likely, that Sappho was exclusively romantically and sexually attracted to women, but we do not have enough biographical information to know that for certain. What we do know is that she wrote so beautifully about her love for women that her male contemporaries studied and preserved her poetry. In fact, the only complete poem that we have from Sappho is her hymn to Aphrodite, in which she entreats the goddess to help her win back a lover who's broken her heart. The word Sapphic first appeared in English in the 1500s, and it was used to describe Sappho's specific style of poetry. It didn't emerge as an adjective used to describe women who love other women until the end of the 19th century, at which point it was a slightly romantic umbrella term for women who were attracted to other women, regardless of whether they were also attracted to men. Bisexuality wasn't used to describe a sexual orientation until well into the 20th century. So at the end of the 19th century, Sapphic became a particularly useful term to describe women who were married to men but having romantic relationships with women. Men actually have a similar term, Uranian, but it's never quite caught on the way that Sapphic did. The word lesbian, which is rooted in Sappho's island of Lesbos, also appeared in the late 19th century as the clinical diagnosis in the emerging field of sexology for women who were exclusively attracted to other women. So lesbian and Sapphic have never been synonyms. They've always meant slightly different things. And the resurgence of Sapphic in the 21st century is in line with how it was used in the 19th century, although now we've created space for more gender variance. Personally, I think the resurgence of the word sapphic is great. When we describe relationships or events as sapphic, not only does that create space for women who love multiple genders, including women, but it also helps protect the word lesbian from being watered down, which is a concern because lesbians are the minority population within the already marginalized broader queer community. I am bisexual, and no matter how many women I date, I am never going to be a lesbian. So being able to describe my relationships as sapphic not only protects my bi identity, but it also prevents me and other bi women from being lumped in with lesbians and diluting that very specific identity. Language is fluid and your mileage may vary, but that's how I think about sapphic as an umbrella term. That's it for today. As always, more information, including sources and further reading, is available in the usual place.